This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back for another edition of the Onside Kick here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you're coming back in, welcome back. If you're new, first time, long time, no matter what you are, welcome into the show where we talk about the best football news. But recently, Mark, we've been kind of going through divisions, previewing teams, and we're finally here. This is the last one.
Yeah.
The last one that we have, and like you said before we recorded, we didn't mean to do this, but who are we going to end with? Who's the last preview we're going to have?
The Atlanta Falcons.
The Atlanta Falcons, which are the Super Bowl runners-up. So we're kind of, you didn't win the Super Bowl, but at least you get to be
We'll talk about
the
you
last
last.
one.
Yep,
You'll be the very last
We
one
liked you guys.
that we talk about. But if you're new, how we do it, we start from the bottom. We'll start with the Carolina Panthers. We'll go all the way to the tippy top and end with the Atlanta Falcons leaving the Saints and the Bucs somewhere in between. They're somewhere in there. But coming into this one, we'll start right away with the Carolina Panthers. And they're a team where you have said in past podcasts, in your Bears prediction video that went up the day as we're recording this, that the defense for the Panthers is the big question mark for you. They're the big one. The offense should be fine, but the defense should be a question mark. They lose Josh Norman 2 years ago, but now they're losing guys like Charles Johnson, and they're only bringing in, they bring in Julius Peppers. They go ahead and they bring in Captain Munnerlyn, one from your former team in the Bears, one from my team in the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, if you're referring to Julius Peppers in his Bears days,
I said
it's nothing to be excited about.
And that's why I said former, because I know he went to the Green Bay Packers, and that's where he was as of late. But this team loses quite a bit. They bring in a little bit, though, where they do bring in Charles Johnson, the wide receiver. They actually bring in a trio from my Minnesota Vikings. Charles Johnson, Matt Khalil, and Captain Munnerlyn all coming to town, and they also bring in, like I mentioned, Julius Peppers from the Green Bay Packers. But I don't want to start with the defense. I want to start with a rookie that was kind of surprisingly picked by this Panthers team so high, because on draft day when we heard the inklings of, hey, you know what? If you're there, we're going to take you, and that was Christian McCaffrey. I want to ask you this, Mark. With the defensive issues off to the side, can Christian McCaffrey kind of carry the load for this Carolina Panther team? And I know before Panther fans get all their panties in a jumble, I know you have Jonathan Stewart, but can Christian McCaffrey be the guy who's as explosive to help out Cam Newton in this offense?
Well, I think he certainly can be such a benefit to Cam Newton, both in the passing game a bit, because he does, he is a good pass catcher. He's got good hands there. And also out of the back for being a running back. So he can do a little bit of both, and Cam Newton needs that. Some of the issues still are going to rely on that offensive line needs to be better. The problem that I have, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the draft pick in the first round for them, but I look at it and I say, okay, but the running game wasn't your issue last year. You had one of the better running games in the NFL. Now, I get it. Jonathan Stewart's getting older. You can't count on him forever. But it's not like he was the workhorse doing it all on his own either. So Christian McCaffrey does come in and does make the offensive, or the run game, I should say, better. But it was the strong point of this offense anyways. It's always been the strong point of this offense. So I don't think you really put yourself that much further ahead with it. But you certainly are improving. That's why you look at, the second round getting Curtis Samuel as well as a receiver, which really is kind of more of where the issue was. And I get that part of that's due to injury. But I just kind of think that it's a good pick to get McCaffrey. Yes, he's going to be very beneficial. And yes, Cam Newton's going to know how to take advantage of this. But it's not a huge move. It's something that we're excited about, we're going to enjoy, but we're not going crazy over it.
I am on the other side. I am very excited for seeing Christian McCaffrey in a Panthers uniform, and mainly because I can't wait to see what he can bring to the run game, to the pass catch game out of the backfield. I know,
which will be good, yeah.
While you were talking, you said, oh, well, you know what? This was one of the units that was the strongest for this team last year.
It was their strongest, yeah.
I just think back to how strong is the word that I'm going to use, but there's probably a different word I want to use, where how good their run game was when they had Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. Kind of that thunder and lightning, per se, in the backfield. The power back, the speed back.
But they had a better... Now, I know we're not talking about the defense right now, but they had a better defense that complemented that then, too.
Well, and I think this is going to get them back to it. And Jonathan Stewart has already said, and I quote, he being Christian McCaffrey, he's pretty unstoppable as far as coming out of the backfield running routes. I can tell you now, they're not going to be anybody in the league that can cover him one-on-one, end quote. And that is what I think he can bring to this offense, because Cam Newton is a guy that this entire team, the big storyline for this team is, can you bounce back? They had the Super Bowl appearance. They had the fall after the Super Bowl, like right after the Super Bowl, the whole Cam Newton towel of the head, Cam Newton not wanting to answer questions. The big storyline we were talking about is Cam Newton, the baby. Then last year happens, you start 1-5, you finish with a 6-10 record, and it was a dismal season for Carolina Panther fans. This is the year where if you're a Panther fan, you want to get back up into that team where it's like, hey, you know what? We're not just a playoff team. We are going to challenge for the division. We're going to challenge to be back on that Super Bowl stage. This is where it starts. Getting a guy like Christian McCaffrey who can go ahead and be a jumpstart for you on offense.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that the problem that the Panthers have had in recent years is that the passing game isn't complementing the running game. And that was an okay issue to have when you had the best defense in the league, or at least the second best for Broncos fans that want to get mad at me. When you had the best defense in the league just a couple of years ago, it doesn't matter that the passing game's not that good. Not bad, but it's nothing special. So when that's continuing to be a problem this year and the defense isn't as good as it was before, this was a below-average defense last year. Not terrible, but it's below average.
Yeah.
That's where those kind of holes get in there. And I'm not saying that they should have for sure drafted a wide receiver in the first round, because they got a good wide receiver in the second round.
Or even like a defensive player.
Yeah, I'm not saying they needed to do either one of those, because Christian McCaffrey is a great pick, and a great pick for the future as well, if he's going to be everything that we all are kind of unanimously agreeing that he should be. It's just not the kind of thing that I think people are viewing Christian McCaffrey and going, boom, they're going right back. They are right now a double-digit win team for sure, and that's not the case.
The thing that I think that might flip this year with the Panthers, not because of just Christian McCaffrey, but just because of adding new weapons, because they also added Curtis Samuel, who's wide receiver out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting him to be, boom, he's the number one
but he's a good
wide
addition.
receiver. But yeah, he's a good speedster on this team. I expect this to be, Calvin Benjamin and Funchess up front, and then Samuel being that slot guy for the Panthers. And I look at their schedule last year, and you look at games like at Denver, 1-point loss. You look at Tampa Bay at home on Monday night, a 3-point loss. The Saints on the road, another 3-point loss. You look at Kansas City at home, another 3-point loss. You look at the Raiders at Oakland, a 3-point loss. You look at Tampa Bay to end the season, a 1-point loss. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games alone that came down to one field goal. One field goal, and even the Denver game was less than a field goal. They would have won that game if Gano didn't miss the field goal, I want to say really late in that game as time expired. And if you flip those, this is a winning team.
Well,
This is a team that is now a winning season, might even be a playoff team.
But I would argue that the running game isn't the thing that flips those type of games.
And that's why I didn't want to insinuate that that's what I was trying to say. But I do think that Christian McCaffrey can help to bring it to where, okay, those
you
games
can start
might
to flip
be, some of them, not
Yeah.
all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, and I do think he's a great piece. I mean, he's one of the most exciting parts to this offense. I mean, you're never going to necessarily be more excited than Cam Newton because of the way he can single-handedly turn around a game.
He got 2 shiny new toys, one in the backfield and one out on the outside.
And he's still got my favorite, Greg Olsen.
Yeah, plus he kind of got an addition and subtraction because I don't care if there's Panther fans that like Ted Ginn Jr., he was a drop machine.
Oh, yeah.
And you are better off with him not on your team. I will always have a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a soft spot, but kind of a rough spot in my heart for Ted Ginn because of fantasy football. Would have won the game. All he had to do was catch that pass against the Colts. Wide open, right in the breadbasket, and he drops it. Right through his hands. Couldn't catch it. Would have been an easy touchdown. You're better without him. You're better with Curtis Samuel. But is the defense going to be the weakest part of this team?
And you look at some of the additions, you mentioned Charles Johnson, Julius Peppers, and
Julius Jardinere Peppers.
Of course.
Let's put some respect on that name.
I think that Julius Peppers is the interesting one because he was very, very successful in Green Bay when he was more of a linebacker. When he was in Chicago as a defensive end, couldn't do anything. But, of course, when he was a defensive end in Carolina, completely different story. He was great. So I sit there and I wonder, it's like, okay, you were successful in a particular kind of defense in Green Bay. And then you go back to a similar defense to what you couldn't really be successful in Chicago. Is it purely that Chicago had a shitty defense? And they did. A really shitty one. Franchise worst defense. Is it purely that was the problem and that Julius Peppers is going to bounce back as soon as he gets back to a much better defense than what Chicago was able to field a few years ago?
I wonder if it's just Chicago in general. That's
just when people go to Chicago, it falls apart.
I mean, kind of. Like, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, look at even, I mean, off the top of your head, can you think of great free agents or great players that have been traded to Chicago and once they've been there, they've fallen off and it's like, wow, this isn't what we expected them to be.
That's kind of the Chicago way.
Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler's a little bit different than Julius Peppers.
Yeah, but that was the one that comes into my mind of how excited Bears fans were, and then it was like at the end how.
But he only really had that one. He had that one good year that really got people excited. Where Julius Peppers had a career.
And the thing that I'm looking at right now is the thing that is the most interesting is part of me was like, oh, Chicago Bears. If him and Ron Rivera were in Chicago at the same time, and they weren't. Ron Rivera was in Chicago in the 04 to 06,
a while ago.
Whereas Peppers was there 2010 to 2013. So it's not even a necessarily I'm coming back to be with the defensive coordinator
just his
that
team.
I had.
His old team.
His old team. Also, I mean, Captain Munnerlyn as well. He's coming back to the Panthers after his 3-year stint with my Minnesota Vikings. And to me, that's the bigger addition to me for this defense is you go ahead and you lose Josh Norman. And
don't try and compare Captain Munnerlyn to Josh Norman.
I'm not saying they are exactly the same, but there was a hole. There was a hole that was blatantly obvious in that cornerback spot.
Yeah.
You lost Josh Norman, and the way you lost him, where he had the tender, he was on the team, and then all of a sudden, nope, not signing the tender, ripping it up, and I'm going somewhere else. And that's how he ended up with the Redskins.
Well, I believe it was more of the owners ripping it up.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Captain Munnerlyn is an exact carbon copy to Josh Norman, but from what I've seen in Minnesota the last couple of years with Captain Munnerlyn, Munnerlyn is a guy that you can put in that cornerback slot. Put him right side, left side, let him go up against top receivers, and he can be a guy that you can say, okay, our cornerbacks are fine. We got Captain Munnerlyn out there kind of leading the unit out there.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a Munnerlyn hater here, but I don't think it's that great of an upgrade. I don't know. Maybe
it's not an upgrade from Josh Norman. It's an upgrade from not having Josh Norman.
I mean, having nothing there, yeah, but I don't think that it's
an
that
upgrade
great
from last season.
It's not that big of an upgrade.
I think it is. I look at the cornerbacks and any of the other cornerbacks. If Captain Munnerlyn was not on this team, I would be saying cornerbacks is a huge issue for this team. they're going to get roasted through the air. I think that Captain Munnerlyn gives them a little stability where it's like, okay, at least we know that we can put him on the top receiver, and it's not like we have a kind of weak link going up against that top receiver.
I don't completely agree. I don't think he's that great. I don't think he's that good. I think that a true number one receiver will have his number. Now, when you were back in the days playing the Bears, sure, Cam Meredith might not have been able to do much against Captain Munnerlyn, but you put Jordy Nelson against him.
I don't know. Jordy Nelson was injured one year.
Yeah, right.
He was injured one year.
And I think Captain Munnerlyn might have been responsible for it. You put him against somebody who's got some good actual number one wide receiver talent, and I think he doesn't look as good. Now, that does get you some success against average teams who don't have a number one kind of guy. But when you're going to play Julio, and you're going to play Mevins, and you're going to play, what's New
Mike
Orleans'
Thomas.
new weapon? You're going to have these valuable true number one wide receivers that are going to go against you and are going to actually make a difference. So I don't know. We'll see. And I'm ready to be proven wrong about Captain Munnerlyn if he goes out there and he does a good job and adequately performs like a Josh Norman.
Well, and I'm looking at the schedule right now of just number one wide receivers that they'll have to play, just based on the number one wide receiver to Captain Munnerlyn. The 49ers, I'm not afraid of.
They don't have much, yeah.
The Buffalo Bills, it's like, is Sammy Watkins going to be healthy? And is and is he going to be the true number one that they asked for? And plus Zay Jones, if Zay Jones has to be the number one, I'm not scared there. New Orleans in Michael Thomas, that's kind of one where it's like, okay, maybe the New England has a plethora. They've got
this is where it starts to get scary.
They've got Brandon Cooks. They've got Julian Edelman out there. The Lions. I mean, Golden Tate. I think all the NFC North teams, I'll be fine with Munnerlyn out there only because he knows them. It's kind of a familiarity thing where I've seen. These teams,
there is a benefit to that.
I've seen these teams twice a year for the past 3 years, but like the Eagles are going to be tougher this year because they've got Alshon. All the division games, like you said, but like Miami, I'm not super scared of. The Jets, I'm not super scared of. And like the Niners and Bills, I'm not super scared of. So
I mean, I would put Jordy Nelson into something to be scared of.
I'm not saying Captain Munnerlyn's going to be that lockdown corner for him, and you don't it's not a Richard Sherman. It's like put him on the right hand side, and he's completely locked down.
And say goodbye to that side of the field.
Say goodnight to that side. However, I'm just saying it's a big upgrade to me having that hole from Josh Norman and now adding that veteran to your team. I think the defense is going to be a little bit better than last year, and this team right now, I wouldn't be surprised because of your schedule. I know that I mentioned I'm not afraid of these teams when it comes to that, but overall, looking at the schedule for the Panthers, it's not that easy of a schedule. It's not that easy. Like, your division's going to be tough. The Bucs could be a playoff team. I expect the Falcons to be in it to win it again like they were last year. The Saints are going to be a tough team, adding Adrian Peterson. I know they lost Brandon Cooks, but they add Adrian Peterson onto that line. You got to play the NFC North. That'll be tough. You got games like the Patriots and the Eagles, teams that I like. This is a team where I think at best you're looking at like a 7-9, maybe 8-8 season from the Panthers this year.
Yeah. I'm a little down on the Panthers, and I know that, and I'm sorry to Panthers fans out there.
No claw up.
I claw up. You guys know I claw up, but I'm a little down on the Panthers this year just because I think that the loss of Josh Norman, and I was one who said I don't think it was going to be that big of a deal, and I was wrong. I can admit that. I was wrong that Josh Norman was a bigger deal than I thought. And I see some of the additions, and I like the ideas of them, but I'm not 100% sold on that. Where even if the defense is better, it's still, if it gets to an average defense, that's going to be beneficial. The scary thing to me when I look at this team and what happened to them since they lost the Super Bowl, they went from scoring 31 points a game to scoring 23 points a game. And that is a huge loss. That's over a touchdown of a loss.
And that's where you get the decision to go for a Christian McCaffrey who can be explosive on the offensive side.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think that wide receiver, the wide receiver and the running back combo in picks 1 and 2, and I know I said that in the wrong order, you got to figure they're trying to get more points, of course. The offensive line, they made some additions there. They're trying to improve that, which is something that they needed. So certainly you can see the rationale behind everything the Panthers are doing, and they should, on paper, be a pretty good team. I'm just not 100% if I buy it completely or not, or if I think that apparently 2015 may have been a flash in the pan. And then maybe this team just isn't going to be that good again, because they were fucking phenomenal in 2015. They were one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, Peyton Manning got lucky that he kind of got an off night out of them. Broncos fans, don't get too angry at me. But this team was better than you on paper, especially with the hobbled Peyton Manning that was walking out on the field.
And a lot of people going into that season, I mean, another thing that you got to look at too is Cam Newton. That was the big thing of the dab year.
Yep.
That was the dab year.
The dab.
And then he retired the dab, and maybe you got to bring back the dab. Bring it back. But 35 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and then last year it went down to 19 touchdowns and went up to 14. I know that Panther fans are going to say, oh, it's only 4 more interceptions, but when you're going from 30-some touchdowns to now 19 touchdowns.
It's the ratio.
It kind of looks like a mere
issue.
He looked like a mere mortal now. He didn't look like Super Cam as we were used to in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think this team has the potential to be a better team. They're one of the teams where if you ask me if I'm willing to put my money on it, my answer is no.
They're a team where right now, I don't have them as a playoff team coming into this year. Like I said, 7-9 is kind of where I have them right now. And looking at the 2015 season, that like, oh, they only lost 1 game. And I know we had the storyline coming in of, do we need a loss from them? Or is it going to hurt them in the postseason? You look at the year before that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they were a 7-9 team. Then they had the 15-1, and then they went right back to right where that kind of 6-10. It's around that 7-9, and I feel like they stay there this season only because, I mean, like you, I like what they added on offense, especially Christian McCaffrey. Like if he's available in fantasy, I'm gonna pick him up. Like he's the guy. Like
I drafted him in a mock the other day.
One of the coveted running backs.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be explosive on the running back side for the Panthers. However, I look at their schedule and like right now, losses that I can see, just chalk it up. 2 to the Falcons, Bucs, Saints. That's 4 right there that I'm giving you. That's 4 losses. I think you lose to the Patriots. I think you lose to the Eagles. I'll have you lose to the Packers, lose to my Vikings. That's 8 losses right there. You lose to the Lions, that could be a maybe game. Boom, they're 7-9. So like, and lose to Miami. Boom, there's 10 losses right there. So this is going to be.
And what if you lost to the Bears?
Sure, Mark.
What if you lost to the Bears?
Maybe if Trubisky's starting by week 7, I give you that game.
It's possible.
Maybe, but it's a tough schedule, and I think that's going to be the Achilles heel for this Panthers team. But before we move on to the Saints, any last things that you feel like we need to touch for the Panthers?
Go Greg Olsen.
Go Greg Olsen. We didn't talk about Greg Olsen enough.
I mentioned him.
Former Bear, you got to mention him again. Former Bear.
1,000-yard tight end. Great guy.
And former Hurricane. Got to mention Greg Olsen whenever we can. But this is where we put the conversation on you. Let us know down below. What do you think about the schedule? Is the defense going to be tough? Really, one of the conversations we had, Panther fans, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the addition for Captain Mutterlin? Are you on my side where, yeah, you know what, this is a good pickup? Or are you like on Mark's side where it's like, yeah, you know what, the pickup's not going to do much of anything because guess what? He is not Josh Norman. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section.